Okay. I have to pan the audience. There they are. Now that you're aware of this issue, it's time to act and make a change in Missouri law. The solution to our problem is to enact legislation for physicians to prescribe lethal doses of medication to terminally ill patients suffering if they choose so. This legislation can be successful if it follows a certain structure provided by other states' legislation and if it has certain safeguards. So let's first start with the structure. First of all, 4 states have passed physician-assisted suicide legislation. According to a 2013 NBC article published by Jason McClure, Vermont has the most extensive physician-assisted suicide legislation. And because of this, it should be used as a model for that of Missouri. And this act was called an act relating to patient choice and control at end of life, passed by the Vermont Senate in 2013. And under this law, there are certain structures. For example, a physician is immune to civil and criminal liability if he or she acts in accordance with this law. Secondly, a terminally ill patient is allowed to administer the lethal dose of medication themselves. And thirdly, within 3 years, an outline for professional conduct will be added to the law. And this professional conduct would allow physician-assisted suicide to be regulated by professional standards. And this would overall normalize physician-assisted suicide into the field of medicine, such as any medical standard practice. And the success of this bill to end terminally ill suffering depends on certain safeguards that have also been placed in other states such as Vermont and Oregon and Montana. According to Dr. Hosseini, who wrote in the Review of European Studies in 2012, he brings up the ethical opposition that there's a potential for abuse for those patients who are vulnerable to be pushed toward physician-assisted suicide even if they don't want it. And this is a very real concern, and to prevent it, certain safeguards must be put into place so that this legislation is safe. And these include, first, a psychological examination is performed if the physician deems that the patient has impaired judgment, such as conflict of interest or depression. Secondly, a consulting physician is always brought in so that more than one opinion is given. And thirdly, there's a specific timeline that the patient must follow. First of all, 2 oral requests for physician-assisted suicide must be given by the patient within 15 days. Secondly, a written request to the physician. And thirdly, 48 hours must exist between the time that the prescription is filled and the prescription is picked up. Secondly, John Keown, who wrote in Cambridge Law Journal in 1997, introduced the idea of the slippery slope of physician-assisted suicide. And this is the idea that physician-assisted suicide can lead to other things such as euthanasia or legalized murder. And Dr. Sheriff, who wrote in Current Oncology in 2012, explained that physicians actually educate their patients about palliative care, hospice, and pain management, and this actually acts as a buffer toward the slippery slope to prevent physician-assisted suicide from going too far. Secondly, a Health Day article written by Serena Gordon in 2013 explained that physician-assisted suicide in Washington was actually used much less than they initially expected. Only 255 prescriptions were written for lethal doses of medication, and of those, only 60% were used in the final act of suicide. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, the audience. Everyone's still here.